And good morning to everybody. Welcome to the Krueger Show meets the Guy Haberman experience. Of course, on this end, we are brought to you by Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. Okay, go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. It's all amazing, and tell them that Krug sent you. It's a phenomenal barbecue experience. And also, we're thankful for our other sponsors as well. Marin Autoglass, marinautoglass.com. Underdog Fantasy. Check that link in the description. Use the promo code KRUG, K-R-U-E-G, and they'll match you up to your first $100. And also, thanks to our most recent new sponsor, and that is our good friends down in Monterey at Sharp Corners Sports Cards and Collectibles. And I have it written down here as far as the details. Let me give you the details. Of course, they're in Pacific Grove. Check them out. Anthony Catania is at 831-521-5264. And they're doing kind of like a sidewalk deal first Friday of every month, where they have free food and drink, and people are out there trading collectibles, and it's really cool. So give Anthony Catania a call. Once again, 831-521-5264.
All right.
The NFL draft 2 days away. Look who's in the house, Guy Haberman, who has his own sponsors I'm sure he'd like to thank. Guy, feel free to shout out your own sponsors right here.
Now, the ones that pay for the podcast only get the podcast. They don't get the YouTube for free. So
look at that.
Yeah. So I'll leave it at that.
Bonus. There's no.
I need to sell a YouTube advertiser, but I'm not giving it no bonus spots on draft week, Larry.
Okay, well, Raphael 5629ers says like and subscribe, everyone. Yep, like and subscribe. The great Guy Haberman in the house. We love streaming with Guy, and we're back doing it. And the voice sounds a little bit better, Guy. I mean, I got to be honest. We had you on a couple weeks ago, and you were a little higher pitched and a little scratchier. You're sounding much better now. How you feeling?
I'm feeling better. Thank you. 5 weeks removed from vocal cord surgery. Been doing my exercises that involve humming into a straw while blowing bubbles in water. I am
basically making it sound like a bong.
That's right. Yeah,
it reminded me of college. I closed my eyes. I'm like, hey, wait a second. I'm back in college. My roommates.
Is Kev on the stream?
Kev is not on the stream. Not today.
Yeah, so feeling good, just managing things. I am busy week for me, Larry, because we got the draft, which is a big deal, obviously. And then I've got, unless they pull me off it, I've got the Colorado spring football game on Saturday, Coach Prime. I think they might sell that place out. So we'll see that'll be my first piece of non-YouTube work since the vocal cord surgery. So I'm eagerly anticipating trying my voice out on TV again on Saturday. So
Coach Prime played for the Commanders at one point, but he doesn't want his kids to play on a cold weather team. I mean, are his kids so good that they could actually call their shots like that? I doubt it.
I haven't talked to him yet this week. I watched his press conference. Somebody brought it up to him. He's like, I wasn't saying any of that. So he's
backing off that.
He's saying stop that rumor.
Well, it's kind of like Caleb Williams, I want to own the team.
He never said that. He never said that. No, like somebody talked to his dad 8 months ago and wrote, I think, it was like one of these.
We want ownership.
Said, from what I could find, he never said that, and then it just became a thing that snowballed.
Well, the draft is coming up, and it's going to start with Caleb Williams. And we're going to get into Aiyuk. We're going to get into the Niners. We're going to talk a lot of Niners this morning. But I gotta mention this. Somebody hit me up and said, hey, or somebody tweeted out. I think it was Draft Diamonds put out a thing saying, there's going to be 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round. There may be as many as 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. And history tells us that one of those guys is going to be a superstar. 2 are going to be okay, and 2 are going to be busts, or 3 are going to be okay, and 2 are going to be busts. You know what I'm saying? Basically, there's only going to be really one great player out of this bunch. And it's interesting to me, and I brought this up when I was streaming last night with John Lund, and I just said, isn't it interesting our dynamic on the quarterbacks? Every year we do the same damn thing. We go into the draft assuming that every guy in the draft, quarterback wise, is going to be a star. And Nobody wants to hear right now that Drake May's not good. Nobody wants to hear right now that Caleb Williams is overrated. Nobody wants to hear right now that Bo Nix is just a guy. Nobody wants to hear that right now. It's like to say that, it's like heresy. But here we are looking at yesterday. Zach Wilson gets traded for a late round pick. That draft with all those quarterbacks that, they're all going to be great. Fields, Wilson, Trey, they're all going to be great. Here we are a year later. None of them are great. Only Trevor Lawrence is still in the same spot. He has potential, but he's not great. And the other guys are all moved and careers are dangling by a thread, and to some degree, maybe not a thread, but you know what I'm saying? They're to their next chapter, and we'll see if it all works out. And I have hope for Trey. I have hope for Fields. I have hope for Wilson. I'm not one of these guys that like, oh, you failed in your first stop, you're a freaking bust. Because guess what? I know Kurt Warner, and I know Terry Bradshaw, and I know Steve Young, and I know all these guys that really weren't good in their first stop or early on, and then became great. Dan Fouts, you name it. And we're talking about Hall of Famers. So I just think it's interesting. Some guy put out there, Draft Diamonds, hey, there'll be one star, couple busts, and a couple guys who are just ordinary. And I said, I just retweeted it. And I said, Michael Penix is going to be a star. And immediately I get this guy. So you think Michael Penix is better than Caleb Williams? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I probably shouldn't go there. I actually do think Michael Penix is going to be better than Caleb Williams. And, they played in the same freaking conference, a conference that you work for the network. So you've seen these guys probably more than I have. They played in the same conference, and Penix was better, and his team did better with maybe worse talent and got to the national championship game. And Caleb Williams is great, but, Matt Leinart was going to be great, and he went top 10, and he wasn't. Carson Palmer and Rob Johnson and all these SC quarterbacks were all supposed to be damn good, and very few of them ever pan out. So, yeah, I do think Michael Penix is better than Caleb Williams, and I think time will prove me correct on that. But it's just interesting that going into the draft, guy, it's like we anoint these guys as a certain thing. And then it's like, that's the premise, and everything kind of stems from there. And you shall never question the premise, even though history, if we look back at the last 25 years, says most of these guys are going to bust. We don't even entertain that going into the draft. Why is that?
Well, I think it feels mean when someone's about to accomplish their lifelong dream of becoming an NFL player to go, half of you guys are going to be, your careers will be dead in 3 years. Yeah. And I think it's a lot like probably like dating. On the first date, you're looking for the upside. You're looking for upside. You're looking for upside. You're looking for upside. There's so much hope. It's like going to a mom and saying 50-50 shot, your kid's going to flunk. Oh, it's probably not 50-50, but you know what I mean? Like 50-50, your kid's not going to become anything near what you hope your child will be. It's like, well, let's see. I think what bothers people about it too is like, those numbers are correct, but we don't know who is who. And somebody could be a bust if they went to one place, but they could be a success if they went somewhere else. And that is true.
That's totally true. Yeah.
Like your thing on Caleb and Michael Penix. Well, Caleb was the Heisman Trophy winner 2 years ago. So Penix, was not better than him 2 years ago. And I think the thing that like people would say about Leinart, it's possible that you're right. It's also possible that Penix is the one that's in the Leinart situation last year. Penix is the one with Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan and Jalen Pope
line
and a great O-line, and Ryan Grubb is his offensive coordinator and Kalen DeBoer is his head coach, right? Really good players on defense. He might be the one who was in the Leinart position. Lefty.
Yeah. No.
He could be the Leinart.
I just see Penix I saw Penix in the wind. I think you remember this game. It was a Thursday night game. Was it last year or the year before? Wind is absolutely howling. The team that they're playing could not pass the ball at all. And it was like just a regular day for Michael Penix. He was just throwing regular passes down the field. His lasers were cutting through the wind. Then he goes to the combine. He had an awesome workout. He ran in the 4.5s. threw the ball better than anybody I thought in Indy. And it's just, he was great all year. I saw him in Utah against the Utes, making some throws. Now, he doesn't always throw off the best platform, and he kind of backfoots it and he wings it. But the guy's got a tremendous wing. You know what I mean? It's like he's an amazing. And then when you hear him talk, he's just really, really sharp. And then Brock Heward, who I really like, and I think Brock Heward is one of my favorite analysts. He loves Michael Penix. He thinks Penix is great. So my biggest fear in this draft is that the Rams or the Seahawks are going to wind up with Michael Penix.
Yeah, well, Seattle would be a good spot for him because his offensive coordinator is now the offensive. Ryan Grubb is the Seahawks offensive coordinator. He was Alabama's OC for like 8 seconds. Saban actually tried to hire Ryan Grubb last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was. So like I think it's going to be really interesting in Seattle. Penix was not. Look, I like Michael Penix. I am very pro Michael Penix. I voted Michael Penix for Heisman this year. Okay, he got my vote in a year that kind of got funky by the end. He was bad against Michigan in the national championship game,
but he didn't have his star running back, who was just totally
no question. But he was
a major
he
factor.
Looked different, right? The Texas game was as good as you can play the position. His game against Texas was one of the great quarterback performances. Like he was dropping dimes. He was over 70% completion. He was as good as it gets. And then 2 weeks later, he was like played one of his worst games.
I mean, how many people everybody blames him, but Roger Rosengarten got his ass handed to him.
Look, one game does not make Michael Penix. He wasn't great against ASU at home either, but one game does not make or break Michael Penix. I am pro Michael Penix, but I don't think he's I think he was I think the situation was very good. And I think Caleb's situation was not as good. Caleb, I love Lincoln Riley, but their offense was basically YOLO. You only live once, every play. Let's make a highlight reel. Now, if your argument is like, we didn't really see Caleb run an offense the way you have to run an offense in the NFL, right? Like doing what he did in college just you cannot run an offense like that in the NFL. So I think you could definitely argue we have not seen him operate the way we've seen Michael Penix operate an offense. One read, boom. It's a lot of like, let's make a highlight on every play. But he did go back and watch overtime, Arizona State, USC, Arizona, excuse me. They run a play in like the second.
I wagered on that game. So
do you remember how it ended? Do you remember the play that SC ran? They lined everybody up to the left, except for like the center. It was basically the Ezekiel Elliott Cowboys formation 2 years ago in overtime against the Niners.
Right.
So everyone was lined up at the numbers. All the defense was out there. They had like a guy or maybe two guys and Caleb, and they just played basically like 3-on-3 and let Caleb go 1-on-1, juke somebody, score a touchdown. I mean, he had to carry much more than Michael Penix.
But he had Marshawn Lloyd. He had Austin Jones. He had some good receivers. Rice's kid.
Yeah, Marshawn Lloyd.
Man, SC's never, the cupboard's never bare.
It's true, but I'm just saying you don't get this year to give them that advantage over Washington. Washington had the same advantage of extremely talented players, and they were a better, more well-rounded team.
Yeah,
I think they're both going to be good. Like they are my two favorite quarterbacks in the draft. So I like them both. But
do you see an obvious bust here? Because I kind of like, if you said to me, who do you like out of these 6 guys? And when I say 6, I'm talking about Caleb, May, Daniels, Nix, Penix.
Yeah.
I like Penix and I like Daniels. And I think May to me looks, I think he's probably going to the Commanders, but
yeah, I do too.
I think May looks like, not like, he's an athletic kid. He's a decent prospect, but the accuracy is, I don't see it there. I watch Carolina regularly. I don't see tons of accuracy from him. I mean, is he mobile? He's pretty mobile, but he's not, I wouldn't call him fast. To me, I don't see a touch there. With Daniels, I didn't like him at ASU a couple years ago. I thought, he's like athletic and he moves around, but he is totally improved. I mean, he has improved dramatically. And how much of that was Neighbors? How much of that was Brian Thomas? I don't know.
I
But
also
I
think
love Daniels.
his development got stunted. Arizona State plateau. He played as a freshman. He was really promising, and then that in hindsight, like, it was a mess, right? Arizona State, when he was there. Like, look back, they just had all their wins vacated, like they were changing. It was a mess. So I think you give him a little bit of slack for that at Arizona State. To answer your question, I talked to my buddy Alex Brink on the show the other day. Alex was a great quarterback at Washington State, and now he's a Elite 11 quarterback coach, and he lives in Oregon. And he said, I think Nix is I would have a third round grade on Bo Nix. Like, that's an appropriate area for him, which is
So
funny.
he had 40 touchdowns and 3 picks this year.
I know. And he athletically, he fits, right? He is an athletic.
And he's a very good athlete. Second generation guy. His dad was a quarterback at Auburn. He was a quarterback at Auburn. He wasn't great at Auburn, but then he goes to Oregon. I thought he was really, really good. But then the last game, who was it that they lost to? They just no-showed the Washington game. My God, he just looked bad in that game.
Yeah, I think they did an excellent job situationally of all. Like, I think he was in the right place a lot, and I think he's going to be really, like everybody is, really dependent on going to the right place and making sure that the coach, protects him. But I don't think he's going to become the guy that, carries your offense, even though statistically it looked like he's a good player. This is part of it. It's like, you don't want to knock this guy who's had an incredible comeback to his career. But I would say he's the one that would surprise me the most. Like, if you went through May, Caleb, Penix, Daniels, Nix, did I miss somebody there? And said, which one is most likely to become the best quarterback of the group? Nix becoming the best quarterback of the group would surprise me the most.
Well, you're right. It is about where you go. But then people said, hey, I like whoever in the Trey Lance draft. I like whatever quarterback Kyle Shanahan drafts. So much for that, right? They drafted Trey Lance and it didn't work out.
But here's what I would say.
Did Zach Wilson fail because of Zach Wilson, or did Zach Wilson fail because of the Jets? Did Justin Fields fail because of Justin Fields, or did he fail because of the Bears? And then, like, are we going to sit there in 3 years if, let's just say, Penix goes to Seattle and Caleb goes to the Bears? Are we going to sit there and say, yep, well, Caleb failed, but it wasn't Caleb, it was the Bears? I mean, he's got a pretty nice little surrounding cast around him now as far as weapons that Ryan Poles has put together. So I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, how much of it's the quarterback? I mean, did Brady make Belichick? Did Belichick make Brady? Well, it looks like Brady made Belichick. Did Montana make Walsh? Did Walsh make Montana? Well, possibly Montana made Walsh to some degree. You know what I'm saying? It's like, sometimes I used to side with the coach. Now I kind of believe that it's probably the player.
Well, the player's the one playing. So I think it's like they're the one that has to make the actual play. The real bullets are flying around their head. But I also think with a quarterback, and I think Montana is an example of this, and Brady was definitely an example of this, it's really valuable to have success before it's all on your shoulders. And I think we'll find out if Purdy benefits from this. Like, you get such a room to grow and become comfortable when you're allowed to not be the franchise quarterback on which everything relies on your arm, but your team still wins. And it just gives you a freedom, I think, and it takes a level of pressure off of you in a way that most young players don't get. It allows you to learn by doing at a comfortable, reasonable pace. You go back and look at Brady's first couple of years, they're not his greatest years by any stretch. And I think for Joe, like, Joe first just had to be exactly what Bill wanted. And then he evolved the thing that Bill did. But we look around, like, a lot of people did some version of what Bill did, right? Or tried to, with some success. But to be first is the hardest. So
Bill was innovative in those early days,
but you need somebody to prove the concept.
Right. I think Bill made Joe early, but Joe ultimately showed that he was special. I mean, he was special. He went to Kansas City and almost led them to a Super Bowl.
But Bill saw it.
Yeah, Bill saw it. Bill had I don't know if Bill saw it. The argument is that Bill wanted Steve Dills and that Tony Rosano wanted Joe Montana, and that eventually he gave into his head scout and went with Montana. Montana was incredibly mobile in those early days too. If we're talking about this year's crop, let's just assume Caleb's a Bear. Let's say May is a Commander. Let's say Daniels goes 3, and he's either a Patriot or maybe a New York Giant.
Okay.
And then maybe
JJ McCarthy is who I left.
McCarthy maybe winds up 4 but not Arizona, maybe Minnesota. Let's say Penix, we'll give Penix to Seattle. A lot of people want to give him to the Raiders, but I'll say Seattle. Denver makes Sean Payton not go after Bo Nix because there was a lot of speculation he would go after Bo Nix. Let's just say Bo Nix is in Denver with Payton. What's the best situation?
Minnesota.
See, I would probably say Penix in Seattle.
Or Penix in Seattle. Yeah, either one of those. I think Minnesota's a great situation. Like, that one's tough because I'm like, JJ McCarthy, is it really? But that situation's really good.
Or I like JJ. Do you mean JJ McCarthy or do you mean JJ Justin Jefferson?
I mean JJ McCarthy. Like, is JJ McCarthy going to become a franchise quarterback? I think it's a long road. But Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison.
It's a nice place to start.
TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah. I mean, they get, that Minnesota could be a good spot in the dome. Plus, who's the placeholder there now? Who's going to be, who will start?
Sam Darnold?
Right? Yeah, Sam Darnold. Right. So you got Darnold to play and take the bullets early while you're learning. It's very interesting. The quarterback thing is just very interesting to me because it's like, we love them. And then all of a sudden they come in the league and it's like, they all go to bad teams. And then it's like, that guy sucks. I mean, people love Zach Wilson. Remember the pro day? All of a sudden now it's like Zach Wilson sucks.
Right.
People love Trey Lance. Oh, he's incredible. He's dual threat. Now it's like Trey Lance sucks. And I actually believe, like John Lynch said it yesterday. He's like, the Trey Lance story's not written. And I agree with him. To me, playing quarterback in the NFL is really, really hard. But it's finite. And if you're smart enough, if you're athletic enough, if you give a shit enough, you're going to figure it out over time. Terry Bradshaw's not the smartest guy of all time. He figured it out. There's been a lot of guys who are not the smartest guy of all time and figured it out. And Trey Lance, to me, is smarter than those guys, cares more than those guys cared, and is more athletic than those guys. I think Trey Lance is going to have a good NFL career. I still believe that. I think Wilson may find himself. It wouldn't shock me. Fields, I think, could have another chapter where he's quite a bit better than he was in Chicago. So it's like, I don't necessarily look at these guys as what it is. I still look at the potential and what it can be. They're still all prospects. But there are people, most people, including the media, you come in, you play well, you're on that star track. You come in, you play poorly, you suck. And there's no getting out of it. And I just don't look at it that way. I think there's guys that will evolve and get better over time. And I think that draft is full of them.
So I agree with what John Lynch said. Fundamentally, his story's not written. And there's plenty of time for me to be wrong. And Trey Lance gets to go play. But I am not optimistic about that. I mean, he's played 8 games in 3 years. And
it hasn't happened yet.
It turned out that, this time in 2020, I wanted him to be a Niner. I was in favor of the Trey Lance pick.
I was too.
I thought it was a good fit. I thought, and he came to a place where it's challenging, but Kyle does tend to get the best out of quarterbacks. And the fact that he cannot remain on their team, I think matters. I think tells us something. Now there's other factors. He was more expensive than Brandon Allen and blah, 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 blah. But the fact that he couldn't be QB2, that they'd rather do Sam Darnold as QB2, that they even acquired Sam Darnold, right?
Don't you think that was them listening to this dialogue that was going on, that was getting more and more ugly and racial and everything else? I think they saw it. I just think they didn't want any more of that. I think they could have made it happen if everybody got along. But then it was like, Kyle's this and John's that, and people suggesting that they had racial motivations. And it got real. I mean, when you're going there, then it's getting ugly and then it's not good. And I don't know. I think that had a lot to do with and that and the cost had a lot to do with them moving on from Trey. I don't think it's like, oh, Trey went to people are like, well, what, he went to a strip club? And I don't think it's that. Come on. It's the inconsistency, the money, and the dialogue that had become very, very polarized.
I accept all of that as true. I think they like Sam Darnold much more. And they saw the future as Brandon Allen is just like, he can stick around as our number 3 guy for a few years.
Yeah.
And I think John Lynch said it a few times. It was true. Trey Lance has to play. It's true. He has to play. Now, he's not playing right now in Dallas, but he's certainly not playing here. I thought, yesterday you were there.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy gives his press conference. Not as a quarterback. We should always have a quarterback do it, and he is the quarterback now. But for the first time in several years, the unquestioned quarterback of the 49ers is the guy that gave that press conference yesterday. Not, well, what do you think? Competition coming up. No.
Well, I mean, there still are some idiots who are like, well, he didn't win the Super Bowl. Come on, guys. He led them to the Super Bowl, coming from behind in the playoffs to do it. And then he played, poised and a really solid game. I don't think most Niner fans would not say Brock Purdy lost the Super Bowl. It was like, maybe Kyle Shanahan lost the Super Bowl.
Everybody lost the Super. I mean, everybody
played
lost
pretty
the Super
well.
Bowl. Yeah, but they lost the Super Bowl. The
Yeah.
coach and the quarterback are pretty important. They're not independent of one another, just like Belichick and Brady aren't, and just like Walsh and Montana aren't. And we don't, if we do a shitty stream today, Guy and Larry did a shitty stream today.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I'm just checked out and you were
if he
good.
played poorly, but let's just say if he had played poorly, then we could all be like, Brock,
for sure.
The moment was too big. There was not one article written in the aftermath of the Super Bowl being, the moment was too big for Brock Purdy. And there would have been if he had,
There's no doubt. But, I think ultimately Trey Lance didn't work in San Francisco because he just was not good enough for them. I don't remember where you were. I know I've disagreed with Grant on this. I thought Sam was better than him last. We don't need to do all this now, but I thought Darnold was better than Trey by the end of the thing. Like, I didn't think it was close. I was out there going every day. Maybe we disagree, Larry, but to me, it made total sense.
Yeah, I mean, Trey had his days, but, the bottom line is in the NFL, you have to be able to, what the defense gives you underneath, when Kyle's calling plays and he's, seeing a guy open underneath, he's sitting there on his headsets going, okay, we're looking at 2nd and 4. And then when he goes back to his headsets and we're like, oh, you know what? We're looking at 2nd and 10 because Trey overthrew the guy underneath. That bothers a play caller. So, yeah, I think Trey was in more. Trey had plenty of great days last summer where he was better than Darnold, but he had overall, I would say Darnold's play was a little bit more even and definitely a little bit more consistent. Where Trey had some great moments, and then Trey, every single day we were out there. I mean, Dave Lombardi and I used to joke about it. Every single day, Trey would miss an absolute layup.
Yes.
Every day.
Okay. Can we talk about something else?
Yeah. Go ahead. Let's get into something else.
So let me tell you what's at the top of my mind today, Larry, which is 31 is really important, obviously. And John Lynch was clear about it. We've talked about it. Nick Wagner wrote a big piece. Nick Wagner wrote a big piece about it the other day. Just how critical this draft is for them. And even Lynch acknowledged it yesterday. Like, Brock will stop being cheap soon. This is an important draft. But the first important thing that's going to happen, by the time we get to the 31st pick, something important will have already happened for the 49ers. And that will be that Brandon Aiyuk has either been traded or not been traded.
We think.
The 31st pick.
We think.
Well, why would it happen after that? They're going to trade him for
Well,
a second round pick.
I'll pay you one. I'll give you one scenario where it happens after that.
Okay.
The Commanders take Jaden Daniels and want to pair him with Brandon Aiyuk and give the Niners 30, 36, or 36 and 36, 40, and Jahan Dotson. And if I'm the Niners, I think that's actually one of the more attractive trades out there, because to me, the guy that you pick at 25 is the same guy that you're going to pick at 50. I think that's where the draft really evens out. And if you could get 2 bites of the apple in the high second and a established young receiver who's got, rookie on a rookie contract, who's got ball skills, to me, that is a very attractive trade. So I would say, but I hear what you're saying. I generally agree, but does 36 and 40 equal 20? I think it does. Now, some people think it doesn't. I think it does, but go ahead. That would be the only scenario. The only scenario.
Yeah, look, on the that's intriguing. On the draft value chart, it definitely does. But the problem is, John Lynch said on Monday they have 22 players with a first-round grade. So you would be trading Brandon Aiyuk for not a first-rounder.
Well, no, not necessarily, because you're assuming that those 22 guys all go in the first round. They could have a first-round grade on Zach Frazier, and he could go 41.
That is okay. That is a fair point. But I think it becomes – your target area becomes much smaller. But you're right. That is a possibility, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I have it rated. I love some guys in the high second that I think are first rounders. And there's some guys in the first round that I'm just kind of like,
Which is always the case.
Yeah.
But I think we got to.
Basically, your point's right, though, I think.
Okay. This is definitely a situation, right? Would you agree with this? Where they have to have players targeted. And only if that particular player is available, then they make a trade. So they have to have a list of players almost that are you asked a great question to John Lynch yesterday. How many gold helmet guys do you have? He said 16, which I thought was a high number.
I did too. I thought he was
their guys.
I thought he was going to say 7 or something.
Yeah. So, you'd imagine Brandon Aiyuk's only getting traded for a gold star, a gold helmet guy.
Probably.
Now you tell me something. Is it possible that a gold helmet guy, definitely a gold helmet guy, can be not a top 22?
Braden Willis was a gold helmet guy.
And he went in the
sixth round or
sixth round.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean star, but I would imagine you've got to have on the Venn diagram, you got to have crossover. It's got to be a gold helmet guy / one of our first rounders, which I would imagine cuts down that list of first round picks from 22 to, I don't know what, let's just make 10, 8. I don't know. And then I think you got to look at who would be desperate enough. And I do think in the first round, in the top 20, you got to be kind of desperate to trade for a receiver because you can just draft a receiver.
Right. But the only thing is, as we know, receivers oftentimes take some time. So it's like that, to me, the reason this is intriguing with Aiyuk is because what if you're going to be fired before?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's a desperate situation. That's the Jets. That's bulky, right? That is the Raiders are not in that spot, but I could see Antonio Pierce doing something desperate. Tomlin is never desperate, but Steelers, Pittsburgh drafts 20.
But right? They haven't been in the playoffs in 5 years.
Yeah, I mean they should operate probably with a little more urgency than they did drafting Kenny Pickett because he knows where the bathrooms at Heinz Field are. But that's kind of the list. And then there was the Charger. Barnwell suggested the Chargers at 5 the other day, right?
Which would be really amazing if.
Yeah, but why? But on what planet? Why would they do that?
Well, because they've got Justin Herbert, because Harbaugh wants to win right now, because he loves a run game, and to have a real good run game, you got to have receivers that block.
You can't win right now with Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr.? Of course you can.
I mean, I love Malik Neighbors, but I don't know that Jim does. Yeah. I don't know.
So, but anyway, the Chargers offer you 5. You fall over yourself running to that pick, right? To that trade. But I think those are
would you? It's not just Aiyuk. It would be Aiyuk and 31 and a third for that 5th pick and like a 6th. So it's like there's more to it than that, and you got to kind of evaluate what you want to do. personally, I think Malik Neighbors is awesome. I think Malik Neighbors is better than Aiyuk potentially. He's definitely better than Aiyuk than when Aiyuk was coming out of college. That's for sure.
No question. And Aiyuk still went in the top, he's still a first rounder. But like, to me, that's where it's at. Now, your Washington situation is not a desperate situation. That would be them saying, let's get a guy we know, help us set a culture, help a young quarterback. I think that thing makes a lot of sense, actually, for Washington.
I think the thing with Washington, the reason and this was a buddy of mine who's back there who knows the kind of the tempo and everything. He said, hey, look, Bob, this is not your typical Washington is not your typical first year deal. Why? Because they're in a huge rush to rebuild that iconic brand. So that's why they brought in Myers, who brought in Peters, who then brought in like 15 veteran free agents. And they're going to try to win right away, to put butts in the seats, to get momentum, to get out of FedEx Field and get into a new stadium and make that franchise worth, double what it's worth today. So don't look at them as like a long-term, hey, year one. Don't look at them the way, you looked at Shanahan and Lynch in year one of their regime, where it's like, hey, man, we got time. Right. I think Washington's in a much more bigger rush than people think.
Okay, so then we'll wait. You're saying we have to wait till the 36th pick to see if the Niners do that. But
yeah,
that would be a tough. You better be right about that, right? That'd be a tough. If you care at all about publicity, which you think they did based on what you just said about why they traded Trey Lance, then that's not ideal. Now, I don't think you should make decisions based on that ever if you're a team. But you are really opening yourself up, right? If you trade him for, even if it's 2 second rounders, even if the draft value chart says 36 and 40 is more valuable than 20, which is what the draft value chart says. It becomes a pivot point for the organization. Like 10 years from now, we look back at the Brandon Aiyuk trade and go, you either reloaded and set Brock Purdy up for a second Super Bowl window, or you torpedoed your last best shot at winning a championship in 2024, because you are subtracting from your team in 2024. Right.
If you make this trade and it winds up like the Buckner-Kinlaw trade, you're not a Super Bowl contender anymore. If you trade Brandon Aiyuk for a pick and you take a rookie that winds up being okay, you're not a Super Bowl contender going forward. You might be able to get there at some point, but you're not. You're taking a major step back at a time where Detroit, Green Bay, and others are taking a step forward. In my opinion, if they did that and they missed like they did on the Buckner-Kinlaw exchange, they're not a Super Bowl contender. So this is an absolutely vital pivot point in the history of the 49ers.
That's what I have to say about that, Larry.
You agree? Yeah, you agree. You agree with that.
Now, look, things always happen that nobody sees happening. Exhibit A, the 49ers, Brock Purdy. But, the margins are thin when your team's getting older, more expensive, and the league is getting like the Rams were down. They're not down anymore, right?
Max says I'm off my rocker again. Well, why am I off my rocker? Why am I off my rocker, Mac? Tell me.
Mo.
Or Mo. Sorry, I'm not seeing that great this morning. Mo, why am I off my rocker?
I've got a bad vocal cord. You got Bob Costas high. We're a real mash unit.
Yeah. Seriously, we're barely getting through this.
Okay, give me a take.
So okay, so now you made a comment a couple minutes ago. You're like, okay, if they'd have to know, like you mentioned, it would have to be like a gold helmet guy.
Yeah.
You'd have to know that the player you were getting, what player you were getting, but you're not trading Aiyuk tonight and saying, hey, you know what? Let's hope Thursday night works out. You're going to be sitting there on the clock, and Trent Baalke called and he's nervous about being fired. So he's going to trade you the 17th pick for Brandon Aiyuk. Okay. Who's available to us that we could choose? I came up with a list of 7 guys that I could see them if they were falling, the Niners would have interest. Tell me if you think this is the right 7. Brian Thomas Jr., the LSU receiver.
It seems like maybe the only other true first round receiver in this draft, right? Outside of the big three.
I agree, though. The more I watch Leggett from South Carolina, the more I think, why can't he be? The Niners worked him out. He runs in the 4.3s. He's 220 pounds. He had a huge year in the SEC. His highlights are incredible. I know there's some drops there, but I mean, Xavier Leggett looks a lot like AJ Brown to me, and he played in the biggest conference, and his highlights are, I mean, he gets it. He runs away from people. He's, how many guys are 230 and running the 4.3s? I mean, Brandon Aiyuk ain't that. Brandon Aiyuk doesn't run in the 4.3s at 230. So, I mean, he's another round 2 guy that I'd be interested in. But let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, Brian Thomas Jr., J.C. Latham, who I view as one of the best right tackle prospects I've seen in a long time. I mean, you cannot bull rush this guy. The whole pass rush starts with the bull rush. You can't bull rush this guy. He'll just stonewall you. Troy Fatanu from Washington, who I think they probably really like, though. I don't know that he pushes anybody in the run game. I like him as a pass protector. I don't know about as a run blocker. Terrion Arnold, maybe from Alabama, who's Lynch said, hey, we may not draft for this year. We may draft for the future. Well, they probably can't keep Lenore and Mooney. So, and Terrion Arnold, that speech at the combine where he thanked his mother was like, dude, you got to be kidding me. This guy's an amazing person. So I think Arnold's on that list. Brock Bowers is on that list. Quinyon Mitchell, who I think is the best corner in the draft, I think he's on the list. And then, Talieisi Fuaga is on that list, though I don't expect him to fall. And maybe, and I don't know what you think of this, but maybe Cooper DeJean from Iowa?
No.
I don't know.
Good list. I think Latham, to me, Latham will definitely be gone by then, right?
I would think there's some mocks that have him there, but
Fuanga might be number 1 on the list.
He's just awesome. I mean, he's just a destroyer in the run game.
Fatanu might be a guard
who doesn't push the pile that well.
So that seems like a reach to me. Not a reach in draft position, but like, this is the guy you're getting for Brandon Aiyuk, with all due respect
to Fatanu.
Yeah. Fuanga, on the other hand,
is it Fuanga?
Whenever there's a UAG, I always defer. I don't know. I think it's Fuanga. I didn't do an Oregon State game this year, and that's really when I dive into the pronunciations. But usually I do a lot of Utah, UAGA. I think there's usually an N in there, Fuanga, like a silent N. Or not a silent N, an invisible N.
Larry, have you ever been on your rocker? No, never. That's a good point.
So I think Fuanga, like, to me, it's about like, who is the blue chip first rounder here, right? Fuanga is one. Latham is one. Brian Thomas probably is one. May require a year in the doghouse, but he is a blue chip first round guy in a draft with 3 clear guys ahead of him. Now if I was going to play devil's advocate on, you can afford to trade away the guy who had the most targets on your team last year, you could argue, well, you could just give Kittle and Debo and Jennings especially just more targets. Like, if you said Jennings catch it, you trade away a receiver for a receiver. Brian Thomas gets 50 targets instead of 100. Aiyuk's 105, whatever it was. And then instead of 20 catches, Jennings gets 40 catches. Like, you could reimagine it a little bit that way.
How about flexing out CMC?
Well, he had 83 catches last year. How many more catches is he going to get?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, as far as it's a great running back draft. I mean, what about drafting a couple backs that you like and flexing out CMC? I mean, that seems like right there.
Taking juice off the field?
Not necessarily. I'm just saying, like, you could use CMC as one of your 2 receivers. It didn't have to be a third receiver.
I see what you're saying.
You
could. He had 83 catches. I don't know how many more catches you can get.
Yeah.
McCaffrey. But hey, we were saying the same thing. Like, you could, in theory, there are guys who could take a bigger workload on your offense. Jennings probably at the top of the list. And then in a year, you think, all right, now Brian Thomas is going to go from 40 catches to 60 catches or whatever. But he would be on that list. Yeah. I mean, I would think. Dejean, no. I don't think
You don't
so.
like him? He's a big time player.
No, I do like him. I just, at 20, is he really a corner or is he a safety?
I think he's a corner.
Okay. If you're telling me you're getting a starting corner, that guy gets on the field this year.
Yeah, I think he's a corner.
If you draft a corner, he's on the field this year. And he's helping you set up the potentially post.
I'm not as big on these other corners. I'm not as big on Kool-Aid. I'm not. To me, he's hurt. He didn't run a great 40 time. I liked Arnold more. And I'm not big on Nate Wiggins, who was just so skinny. They worked him out. I know he runs in the 4.2s, but he's so skinny. I mean, there's a lack, he's not setting any edge in any run game against anything. He's just, he's a pure cover guy only. So I don't know. There's a couple of the corners I'm a little nervous about, but I guess the other question I would have for you is on the Lynch thing yesterday. A lot of people, it's funny, we all sit there, we hear the same thing, and everybody's got different takeaways. A lot of people were like, Lynch just said it. Aiyuk ain't going anywhere. Okay. And a lot of the people in the room had that take. Like, he loves Aiyuk. He said that he would, that he doesn't anticipate Aiyuk not being on the team on Sunday. But he didn't do what he did the year before with Bosa, where I literally asked him, is there any scenario in which you would trade Nick Bosa? And before I could even get the word Bosa out, he's like, no, he's here. And he's like, he's like, no, he's here. End of story. Next. He's like looking around. He looked away from me after he answered the question and was like, on to the next one. Like, there is no scenario where Bosa will not be here. He didn't do that yesterday with Brandon Aiyuk. He was asked if he would give. What was the question he was asked? If he would give Aiyuk.
He was asked if he gave the agent permission to seek a trade.
And he said, I don't want to talk about that.
That's where he shut it down, right? Which is like, he said he didn't want to talk about it. Then he answered some questions. And you just, and I said this yesterday about the agent, Ryan Williams, because he shut down a few of those Aiyuk has demanded a trade tweets claims.
Right.
But the second you comment on stuff, then it's apparent when you don't comment on stuff also, right? And I think one thing that's been very clear is that there's a very clear line of communication between John Lynch and Aiyuk and his agent. I think Ryan Williams, the agent, and I think
everything's on the table.
I think they know what the Niners would do, who they would trade him for, if they would trade him. They know what they'll be willing to offer. And I don't think he ever demanded a trade. It doesn't make any sense. But I do think it makes sense if the agent has a good relationship with John Lynch to say, hey, John, we want to go see what our value is. And from Lynch's perspective, if he doesn't think that there's many teams out there that would trade a first for Aiyuk, it does give the Niners leverage to allow the agent to go find out what's out there. Because if he doesn't find anybody or doesn't find two teams willing to trade a first, they lose leverage with the Niners. If he goes out there and he's like, I got 5 teams that would trade you a first, John. All of a sudden, Brandon Aiyuk has more leverage to say, I'm not taking $23 million a year, $24 million.
And he's got more leverage in whatever team picks him up because they just traded their first round pick to get him.
Well, that is an immediate leverage. But I just mean, if you're Lynch, there are scenarios where it makes sense for you to allow the player and the agent to go out there and do their due diligence.
But then push back, but then the agent pushes back on the, the 49ers are shopping him kind of narrative. Because then if you're shopping him, now suddenly it's like, oh, the Niners are in a tough spot and they have to move him. Lynch wants the entire league to think that they can sign him, they could trade him, they can do whatever they want with him, and they're ready to do any of those options. If the whole league thinks they can't sign him, they have to trade him, then you don't get as good of offers.
I do think they could sign him. I'll tell you a couple things I've not changed my mind on, but 2 things I'm thinking about a little differently. One involves you in the last week. Number 1, my prediction right after the Super Bowl was the most likely outcome was that Brandon Aiyuk plays this year on his 5th-year option without an extension.
I think that's not an option, but go ahead.
Listening to John Lynch talk yesterday, it was very clear because the previous press conference after the Super Bowl, he said, he could play on his 5th-year option. Yesterday, it was very clear. If he's staying, they are extending him. Okay. So that's one thing I don't think the same way I did a week ago. The second thing is, I thought you were a little conspiracy theory guy when you said after Brock's interview with Pat McAfee, well, it's kind of weird the way Brock's talking about him. My take at the time was, as experienced as Brock is giving interviews, he's not as comfortable as he'll be 10 years from now, where he's just really fully himself. Brock gives plenty of kind of stock answers. He's loosened up a little bit in the last year, and he'll continue to. It's very natural. But again, yesterday, he talked about Aiyuk in the past tense. Now, maybe it's just the way, maybe he's just talking. It's not really means anything. But I have for you the transcript of what Brock said. I know you were there. I watched it. What we've done has been pretty cool. I'm just thankful I've had the opportunity to play with him. It's been awesome. I do trust John and Kyle in terms of getting guys who are going to make plays and be the right fit for our offense and everything. So at the end of the day, BA has been a brother for me, and I want the best for him. So that's 5 instances of past tense.
And to me, the strongest one was I trust Kyle and John. What was it, to get the right pieces or to have the
I trust Kyle and John in terms of getting guys who are going to make plays and be the right fit for our offense and everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, if he stays, he stays. If he goes, I trust these guys will replace him with guys who can do it.
Now, what does that mean? Does that mean to you he's gone, or just that everybody's aware that it could go either way right now?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think everybody's aware that it could go either way right now. And also, I just think that we're, look at of all the pieces to replace, it's easiest to replace the receivers. Why? Because every single draft in the last 3 or 4 is loaded at wide receiver. I mean, you could go, if tomorrow Brandon Aiyuk fell off a truck and hurt himself and was on the team but was just not available to them, they could go sign Tyler Boyd, draft Xavier Legette in the 2nd round, and probably not miss a beat. I mean, they probably, could be similar offensively to what they were this year. So I don't know. I mean, I like Aiyuk. I just don't look at Aiyuk as he's not Rice. It's not like he's the greatest receiver that ever walked the earth. He's good. He's good. Would I rather have him? Yeah. But there are probably better receivers in this draft down the road than him. I think Neighbors is going to be better. Thomas is an amazing talent. He had 17 touchdowns this year. He's 6'3" and he runs in the 4.3s. So, I mean, and I like other receivers in this draft as well. So I just don't think they're over a barrel. People act like, oh, you gotta have this guy. I don't know if you gotta have this guy. I think I'd rather have this guy than not. And I don't want to give him away for nothing, but I mean, I'm not saying he's just a guy. He's better than that. He's damn good. But he's not oh my God, the franchise is going to be up for sale now because they don't have this guy.
Well, he's a really good fit for your quarterback. I think that is part of what makes him valuable.
And your run
to the
game.
Niners. And your run game. He's a very good blocker. He's a willing blocker. You've invested in him, whatever. But he plays with a quarterback that throws with anticipation. So it's important that he runs precise routes. He runs precise routes. He's not a downfield separator. Fine. Brock doesn't. That's not really that. From an intermediate standpoint, they're an excellent fit. The question, though, is not, is he replaceable? The question is, the lottery question is, will you pick the right guy to replace him? And that's where the risk is, because if you're trying to win a Super Bowl this year, which you are, if that guy gets the Aiyuk treatment, then he doesn't really help you this year. He helps you in 2-3 years. Okay, fine.
And it's not a spot where you can be like, well, we'll just draft 5 receivers. No. You're only going to keep 5 or 6 on your roster. One's going to be Debo. One's going to be JJ. lots of people down there, and we'll get into this later, think McCaffrey's brother could be on this in this mix. But that's another one too. It's like, how many receiver spots are you going to have, and are you going to bring in McCaffrey's brother? I mean, I don't know. I mean, this all kind of comes together. It makes let's just say this. There's some uncertainty whether Aiyuk's coming back at a time when there's a lot of freaking options out there, and they could make a number of moves and move this wide receiver room around, and change the focus of the team, and from to make it even more of a running team. I don't know. I love Brandon Aiyuk as a player. I would like to see him stay, but there's this cap issue. It's not just, hey, they could replace him. They could replace him and alleviate a big part of their cap problems.
I think from a receiver standpoint, that can take care of itself in a couple of years. I mean, Debo becomes very cheap after June next year to cut or trade. It may be that they really maybe Kyle looks at this like, Debo, I got like 3 more years of Debo. He may look at it that way, right? Like, no, guys. Like, but the reality is Debo. Brandon is the youngest of their skill group, right? Yeah. Like
he's their best weapon.
He should be the most likely. Well, what was the stat though that you had last year? Yards per play goes down like by 2 yards when Debo's not on the field. Remember that stat?
Yeah. But
so I think Aiyuk's their best weapon. But
who's their best weapon going forward, especially off of the way they used CMC this year? I'd say it's Aiyuk.
Aiyuk is definitely the guy who should be most likely to be like when Brock Purdy looks back at his 12-year Niner career, the guy he played the most with is Brandon Aiyuk. So we're at a fork in the road where Brandon's either gone or he's the longest tenured teammate at Brock Purdy's Ring of Honor speech. Okay. What else?
You didn't really say your takeaway on Brock's dialogue in the past tense. Do you view that as just Brock just doesn't know what he's talking about and just is kind of talking? Or do you view that as Brock knows that there's, because he has talked about him twice in the past tense, and he did kind of voice instead of saying, hey, he could have said, that's my guy. I gotta have my guy. He's not saying that. He's like, right. I believe in John and Kyle to find guys that fit our offense, which sounds like I've been told this guy may be on the move. And
I think he's prepared I think he's prepared for that possibility. Now, again, I still think Brock is still finding his voice. I think Brock knows who he is, but in terms of like press conference, being the most comfortable, trying to make sure you don't screw something up, or in interviews, I still think he's finding his sweet spot there. So it could be that. It could be partly that. But to answer the question, I think he knows that it's a possibility that Brandon Aiyuk is not on the team.
Mm.
Now, that is different than why is everything past tense? Like, he's not talking about him like it's a possibility. If we took what he said literally, we'd be like, he's talking about him like he is Gone. Which I think that's still TBD. I don't think he's gone. So, but I think I think they, as like their own little ecosystem, are very aware of the options that are on the table. Remember last year, Larry, Aiyuk like Instagrammed or tweet. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option until the last minute, and Aiyuk admitted to getting a call from his agent like the weekend. It was either during the first round or the second, something. I don't remember exactly. I got to go back and look. But like kind of get his heart jumping a little bit, going, sheesh, like I thought everything had just changed, and he was just calling to check in. So I think they were open to trading him last year as well, and it didn't happen.
I've been told by people who know Brandon that he just loves fucking with people, and that he's just, that he wants to be a Niner. He really wants to be a Niner. TJ Hushmanzada went on 95.7 the game yesterday. He said he's been working out with them. He wants to be a Niner. But then there's that report that he wants to get paid more than he wants to be a Niner, that he wants to get the big bag more than he wants to be a Niner.
He'll if he's a Niner, he'll get the big bag.
He'll get a big bag, but he may not get the biggest bag.
No, maybe not the biggest bag, but Bosa got the big bag. Debo got the big bag. He'd get the big bag. Like, maybe not the biggest bag, but he'd get the big bag.
But if it was one or the other, if it was like, hey, man, you could be a Niner for 23.5, but you could be a Charger for 30. It sounds like he'd rather have the 30.
He doesn't get, it's not, first of all, it's not his choice.
Right.
Do you want to be a Niner for 14 this year and then 25 next year and then 25 the next year and then 27 or not? Like, it's not his choice. We could tag you. We could, that's what the Niners are saying. They would not tag him, but, and I agree. Like, I think if I were in his spot, I'd love fucking with people too, but they did wait until the last minute to pick up his 5th-year option. Like, that did happen. All the other 5th-year options were picked up, and except for Aiyuk's, maybe somebody else's. I don't remember, but that did happen, right?
And why? You wonder if he's got residual bitterness over that. What did you make of the Aiyuk with Jaden Daniels? 5 days from now, there's going to be explosives. Is that some people have said, oh, well, that's just Jaden Daniels is going to be drafted. I don't buy that at all.
I think that's part of what you previously just said about understanding how to say, like, do you think him tweeting at Mike Tomlin, people say we look alike? You think he thought like, well, this is my best way to get traded? No, that's him messing with people.
Having fun.
Yeah.
Lynch had a bloodlines thing yesterday that I thought was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, I really believe in bloodlines. And there are 4 guys in this draft with direct ties to the Niners bloodlines. Jerry's kid, Brendan, Luke McCaffrey, Christian's brother, Tariq Owens, Terrell's son, and Frank Gore Jr., a chip off the old block, Frank Gore. What would you set the over-under on of those 4? What's the over-under on the number of guys with Niner bloodlines coming to the Niners? I think Lynch may – I think that it's highly likely that Tariq Owens will be in camp just because who wants him? And he's an undrafted free agent, and what the hell? Why not? Maybe the same with Gore. The other guys you're going to have to draft. But I kind of feel like they will draft McCaffrey. I was sitting there next to Dave Lombardi yesterday, and he's like, yeah, I think they'll draft Luke as well. But that means they've got to beat everybody else to him. I don't think they can take him in the 5th round. I think he'll be gone by then. What's your assessment of Luke McCaffrey? He had good numbers. He was all conference his first year as a receiver. He ran a better 40 time than Christian. When you flip on the film, though, he doesn't get tons of separation. I don't see a super special player, but Christian is not like sort of interested in playing with him. He's like passionate about playing with him. And I'm convinced that he's gone to Lynch multiple times and said, figure out a way to get Luke here. What do you think? Niners have 3 picks in the 4th round. Would you use one of them?
Yeah, Luke? I think that's ultimately he makes the most sense for the Niners because Brendan Rice will not be available at 124, 132, 135 at the end of the 4th round. And
you're sure of that?
No.
Oh. Okay. You said it was certainty.
Well, I'm just saying Luke McCaffrey is kind of a 5th to 6th round receiver, right? Brendan Rice feels like a 4th round receiver. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So I think it's more likely at the end of the 4th round when you've got 3 picks that you can kind of, you can use 1 or 2 of those, I guess, to move up, or all of them to move up. But that's where you go, all right, this guy's a 5th round guy, but he won't be there 50 picks from now for us. So let's take, or 40 picks from now for us. So let's take him we got 3 fourths. Let's use one of those. That's why I think Luke makes the most sense. I mean, if Brendan Rice is there at 124, great, take him. Like, he can do some of the return stuff. There's a physical nature. There's a real polished nature to Brendan. Luke, the thing you love about Luke, I think, as a converted quarterback, he should acclimate pretty quickly because he's got a quarterback's mind to an offense that's challenging to learn. Two, what I like about him in the fourth round is that when I watch him, you're right, Larry, he doesn't do a lot of separation, but he does catch everything. And if you're receiver 3 on a given play, I think Shanahan gets guys open, right? So I think he'd be a pretty good fit because part of the problem with like Danny Gray is they put him on the field for a play and it's all or nothing. Like you better catch the ball. And if you're going to be the 5th receiver on the 49ers, I think the number one quality you have to have is you have to catch the ball because you might get 13 targets all year.
Can
so
he
you better
return?
make the most of them. Well, he hasn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he could be your emergency 4th string quarterback. God knows they needed that.
He could be. I mean,
not that long ago.
He was once he had a year where he was like a 60% passer. Now he threw 1 touchdown, 6 picks that year, but not a lot of throws.
I mean, does he complement what they got? I mean, JJ's the possession guy, Debo's the underneath guy, Aiyuk's the across the middle in the intermediate and somewhat deep ball guy. It seems like to me they really need like a burner who can run off the coverage as the 4th or 5th guy. And then now they got Trent Taylor, who's like, what's he there for? Is he going to make the roster? Is he going to, is he going to be the return guy? So it's like, Larry, this not? Isn't this last spot really more for a burner?
Yeah, but are you really getting when you draft a burner with a 4th or a 5th or a 6th round grade? What are you really getting?
Just a raw guy who can run off the coverage,
right? But like, is he ready to catch the ball as a rookie? If he's a 5th round fast guy, if he's a fast guy, what's he doing in the 5th round? Well, are his routes terrible or his hands bad?
Yeah, usually. Man, in this draft, though, amazingly, Guy, there's like 5 guys who all run really, really well, who are all projected in the 5th round or later. Tyler Harrell, Ryan Flournoy, Gould from Oregon State. And there's like, 3 or 4 more guys who all run, sub 4.4, who are all thought to be mid to late day 3 guys. The number 1 guy on the list is Tyler Harrell from Miami, who's ran 4.24 in his workout, and a lot of people project him to go in the 7th round. So they could go fly pattern burner and have any number. Bub Means from Pitt runs really well. There's a bunch of guys who run really good 40 times who could supposedly be there.
Scarred by the Danny Gray experience.
Yeah.
I would go with production.
Yeah, no, I would too. Because it's like, and I mean, I mean, if I could get Tyler Harrell as an undrafted guy or a 7th round guy, I would still be interested. But, get a few guys that can run and see if any of them can pan out. Because so far, Danny Gray, 1 hit here, 1 hit there. Every time he gets hit, he's hurt.
He doesn't catch the ball. Like you've been, like watching him in practice, he does not catch the ball consistently. I give him credit because he plays hard on special teams. I give Danny Gray a lot of credit for
as a coverage guy.
Yeah. I think he deserves credit for making himself useful in that way.
He told me that he's got a really awesome touchdown dance and we got to see. I'm like, yeah, we got to see it. When are we going to see it? There was an article today in Bleacher Report about a bunch of veterans that could get dealt during the draft. Justin Jefferson, Brandon Aiyuk, Patrick Surtain. It wasn't in the article, but I've heard people say maybe Budda Baker. Is there a scenario you think where the Niners extend Aiyuk, create extra cap room? Because that's how if you want to say how they're going to get extra cap room, as soon as you extend him, he comes off the 14-4 franchise tag and he's playing probably for $4 or $5 million in year 1, and you've saved $10 million on the cap, and now you've got ability to add a Budda Baker. Could you see something like that where we're talking about him moving and maybe he doesn't move and they get him the because Lynch said, hey, I don't want to see this go like Bosa and Debo down to the wire. Maybe could they get it done sooner, maybe even this weekend, and then use that to acquire a veteran? Do you see the Niners shopping for a veteran? Because they're inside their Super Bowl window on day 3.
I mean, I do think just fundamentally extending Aiyuk to create space to add somebody this year makes a lot of sense. And they do. We've seen it multiple times with them, right? Usually, like once the season starts, they'll add guys. Um, Part of the reason I think it's intriguing to wait a year on the Aiyuk extension is because you really can create that space. You can push that space out for when you really need it. To do it now almost feels kind of useless unless you use that space this year. Although, I that's a secondary consideration too. If he's one of your core guys and you can extend him, you do it. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think I don't see them doing it this week though.
You don't.
To me, it happens later.
You're
Aiyuk wants to wait for all these receiver contracts to get done anyway, right?
I know, which is in his interest, but that's not in the 49ers' interests, really.
But the place where he does have leverage is he does get to choose when to put his name on paper. He does get to choose when to sign the contract, right?
No doubt. And his side is maintained. Ian Rappaport had this months ago that they want to wait until the whole thing kind of clarifies itself so he can get as much money as possible. All right, let's hammer down on a couple things before we jet. We're an hour and 10 minutes into this. We don't want to go too much longer, but I do want to get a couple thoughts from you. All right, I would say if there's no Aiyuk trade and the Niners are picking at 31, they're not trading up, they're not trading back. They're sitting there at 31. I would say if you made me wager that it's going to be an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a wide receiver, a corner, or a linebacker. I don't think it will be a safety. I don't think it will be an edge. I don't think it will be a defensive end, though Darius Robinson is a name that's floated out there. I don't think it's going to be a tight end. I don't think it's going to be a running back, and I don't think it's going to be a quarterback or any special team. So O-line, D-line, which is what Lynch kind of referenced yesterday, wide receiver, corner, linebacker. They're picking at 31. What O-lineman do you want at 31? We'll just go right down the list. If you could have your pick, realistically, not Fuaga, because he's not going to be there, but realistically, who's the best O-lineman you think they could? Because to me, they need a great O-lineman. Do they need a guard? Yeah. Do they need a tackle? Yeah. Do they need a center? Yeah. They need everything. They need everything except for Banks and Williams they could use. Who, if you're taking an O-lineman at 31, who are you taking?
Well, I agree with that. I really like, and I think a lot of people do. I really like Jackson Powers Johnson, the center from Oregon,
who's huge.
And he's athletic.
And he dominated. I think he won every single one-on-one at the Senior Bowl.
He's just I really like the guy. But I don't know that you take him there. Graham Barton seems to make sense. I don't know that he'll be there. Jordan Morgan is the guy that I've mentioned many times. Jeff Schwartz, the offensive line guru, came on with me a while ago. And he said he thinks that's the guy that makes the most sense in terms of might be available and kind of fits.
Can't stand him.
But he might be a guard too. You can't stand Jeff or you can't stand Jordan.
No, I love Jeff. I can't stand Jordan Morgan. Jordan Morgan, to me, I watched his film extensively. He got bull rushed consistently by Pac-12 defensive ends. He's got short arms. I think I think he really is more of a guard. If you're getting bull rushed by Pac-12 DNs, you're going to get bull rushed something ferocious by NFL D tackles. I think he's I think he's one of those guys that looks good on paper, but I don't like him. I don't like him at all. I think he's an underpowered guard that's going to get absolutely bull rushed and way overdrafted.
So would you take a center at 31?
I would take Nick Frazier, or Zach Frazier, I should say, from West Virginia.
Okay.
I mean, the guy got hurt on the field. Instead of getting the cart, he crawled off. I mean, a
lot of these offensive linemen want it though.
48-0 as a college, as a wrestler. He dominates in his one-on-ones. I interviewed Lee Koba from their defense. He said, I practiced against this guy every day. He was a beast.
Yeah. He was a 4-year productive player.
Yeah. I think and then let's be honest here. If you're going to get anywhere with the 49ers, you're going to have to go through Detroit, Detroit now has DJ Reader, who just worked Jake Brendel last year in the Cincinnati game. If you're going to win the Super Bowl, you're going to have to beat either Matabuke and Pierce and those monsters inside from Baltimore, or Chris Jones. I mean, you got to be legit. You can't be street free agenting it at center and guard.
Yeah.
You gotta get big time, big boys who can handle, Chris Jones. And to me, Zach Frazier would be my guy.
Would you start him at center this year, or you would?
Yes, yes,
okay.
and I would move Brendel. That's $5 million that you're saving there.
So this is your pick at 31, is Zach Frazier.
I'd take Zach Frazier at 31.
Is he your number one offensive lineman at 31?
I think I love the Jackson Powers kid as well. I mean, he's bigger. He
did the Sione Vaki. Do you remember he did the Sione Vaki thing, where Vaki played defense in the bowl game? Jackson Powers Johnson played defense in a bowl game.
I didn't know that.
A couple years ago.
What, nose guard?
Corner. No. Yeah, he played defensive tackle.
Corner.
Yeah.
No, he's monster. I mean, I love the Oregon kid, but to me, Frazier's the can't miss guy. Frazier is that guy that could start week 1 and start for the next 10 years. So I'm a big Zach Frazier guy. I think more than anything, they need a great offensive lineman. I'd rather take the top center or the top 1 or 2 centers.
Right.
And Baldy was on last week with me, and he said, hey, man, you don't have a great offensive line unless you have a great center. Now, this is a guy who's been watching a lot of Jason Kelsey and a lot of Philly tape, so that's his perspective. But if you go back in time, I forget who the Patriots center was, but, the Steelers back in the 70s.
Ryan Wendell? Was that who it was?
Was it Mankins? Mankins played
guard.
Mankins
wasn't the center. Wendell was one of their centers.
But, I mean, usually if you have a great team, you got a great center. Mike Webster with the Steelers, Jesse Sapolu with the Niners, Stepnoski with the Cowboys.
But do you need to draft that guy there?
Well, maybe I would trade back 5-10 spots and go with the Frazier. But I love Zach Frazier. So if it was an offensive lineman, I would take Zach Frazier. My favorite guard is this kid, Mason McCormick. Tackle-wise, I kind of like some of the guys down the board. In fact, I'll tell you one of the guys who I think is a sleeper tackle. If you said, give me a guy you think the Niners are going to draft, I think the Niners are going to draft Walter Rouse, the former Stanford kid who transferred to Oklahoma. He allowed the fewest pressures in the entire country this year among all offensive linemen, and he was really good as a run blocker. And obviously, he's a smart kid. And you could probably get him in the 5th round or 4th round.
He's big.
He's a big athletic guy. I could see Rouse being a day 3 pick for them. But if Mims were there, I like Mims quite a bit as a prospect, even though he only played 8 games. And there's a few others I really like, but I'm not a big Jordan Morgan fan. And there's other guys I'm not a big fan of either, but I'm really not a big fan of Jordan Morgan. So,
who's your defensive lineman?
My defensive lineman is Michael Hall, who was the number 1 in the country in pass rush win rate among all defensive tackles. He ran 4.76 at 300 pounds. He did it in the Big Ten. He dominated that kid Nugent, the center for Michigan in the Ohio State Michigan game. To me, I see a Bryant Young type
another
guy.
Stanford transfer, by the way.
Nugent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love Michael Hall. He's only 20. He's not a run stuffer. He's a pass rusher, but the quickness there is just so amazing. I love Michael Hall. I like Johnny Newton, but there's some injury concerns. I like Rororo, but I think there's some rawness there that there's going to be a ramp up period. There's some other defensive tackles that I think are pretty damn good, but Michael Hall is ready to roll. If you tune into Ohio State, if you watch him at all, he's number 51. He's just so quick. Quickness is the most underrated trait in interior defensive line play. If you're incredibly quick, that takes you to a different level. And I just think Michael Hall, they worked him out. Man, how do you work this guy out and look at those measurables and watch that film and say, no, we don't want him? I mean, I would even overdraft him. A lot of people think, yeah, you know what, he's going to go in the 40s or 50s. push comes to shove, I'd probably take him at 31. I love him.
The concern would be, are you taking a player? Now I know he's playing the position he's playing, so these numbers aren't going to be huge anyway, but 24 tackles last year.
Yeah, he doesn't make tons of plays against the run.
Are you taking another? Now he's not as big. He's not nearly as big as Kinlaw, but are you taking a project more than an immediate impact guy?
I think he's pretty much. There's all kinds of different defensive tackles in this draft, right? There's guys that are that one technique, which is like Tavondre Sweat, McKinley Jackson, those guys who are just run stuffers. But I kind of think in the wide nine that two gapper guy who's going to take on blocks. I think everybody's got to have a role. You got to rush the passer. So I don't know that those are their guys. Byron Murphy's going to be gone. Johnny Newton. So they're going to be looking at a group at 31 that includes maybe Johnny Newton, but he's coming off an injury and he's a little short. Braden Fisk, who's I think has to be playing a rotation, but I love him, and I think Kosherik would love him. Rook Ororo, who I think is probably the best talent of all these guys. 6'4", 295, tons of speed, tons of power. To me, I don't think you can go wrong with him if you coach him up. And then there's the gigantic 5-star kid from LSU, Mason Smith, who's was a 5-star recruit and just had some injuries. He's a redshirt sophomore, but he is, you catch him on the right day, he looks incredible. I mean, this is a very special player. So, so I think that's what you're looking at. And then there's the 5 technique group that includes, Chris Jenkins, Michael Hall, Brandon Dorless. And of that group, Jenkins to me is more of a workout warrior, and Darius Robinson's on this list. Dorless is really intriguing. You could probably tell me more about Dorless. He really moves well at 285, but I think Hall is got the fire and the speed. I think he could be an interior rusher and be good enough against the run. I think he's one of their leaders. I don't know. I'm a big Michael Hall guy.
Different position, but off the edge. I mean, I think Chop Robinson would be, if Chop Robinson's available at 31, I think you'd be pretty happy about that.
One thing about Chop Robinson is if you watch the tape, it's like he's a little bit of like a guy who beats you with speed or it's over. Like he's going to need to develop he's got great speed, but like Adisa Isaac, I think takes on blocks better. Chop is a little bit of a combine guy for me.
I would like to see them have a guy that beats you with speed.
Yeah. But I mean, I like Mo Kamara more than I like Chop Robinson.
I know you like Mo Kamara, but where's he going? He's not going that high.
No, he might go in the third. He might go in the third round though.
So not a huge 94.
Yeah.
What do we need here? We need a receiver.
So my O lineman Zach Frazier, my D lineman's Michael Hall, my receiver would be Brian Thomas if he's there. If he's not there, I might be okay with Leggett. I mean, I don't know where you are with the.
Boy, that feels rich.
I'll say this: I'm not a Ladd McConkey guy. Troy Franklin, very productive, but there's something that worries me about Troy Franklin. Keon Coleman.
Agreed.
Keon Coleman has got a big catch radius, but I don't think he separates. He doesn't run that fast. Adonai Mitchell is really intriguing as well, but there's some concerns there for me as far as durability. He seems like he's a little thin. Pearsall's a great route runner.
How much did Aiyuk weigh coming out?
Aiyuk's smaller though. This guy's like a little bit angular. I mean, there's Xavier Worthy, but I don't think he fits the Niners. So it's kind of like if you look at those receivers, to me, I guess I'd go Mitchell and Leggett. Roman Wilson to me doesn't break tackles. Are you a Jalen Polk fan?
Yes, not at 31, but yes.
Corley,
Tough.
that's a little
Jalen Polk
early.
had I think he got his spleen burst and stayed in the game. We had to go to the ER.
Wow.
Something like that.
I do love Malik
and
Washington.
He blocks.
I'll tell you this. I love Malik Washington and I love Jacob Cowing. Smallish
yeah,
slot.
Do you have Cowing's 40 in front of you?
It's 4 in the 4.3s. I think it was 4.33.
Yeah. Productive, has been productive.
And he was a transfer, right? Didn't he? He transferred to Arizona?
UTEP.
Yeah, UTEP to Arizona.
As a kid, mature guy.
So of that group, I mean, Malik Washington, that's too early for him. And so to me, it's Brian Thomas or Xavier Legette at wide receiver.
Yeah, I think I think AD Mitchell is the guy that fits there just from a value standpoint. Right. And to me, if you're drafting at 31 a receiver and keeping Brandon Aiyuk, then AD Mitchell actually makes a ton of sense. Mm-hmm. If you think he needs a little more development, a little more weight, he needs his routes need to get crisper. I think you can almost draft a guy if you're keeping Aiyuk that you would not draft as an Aiyuk replacement. If your thing is, well, he's not that big and his routes aren't great, perfect. Let him learn from Brandon Aiyuk then.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're replacing Aiyuk with him, you go, well, he doesn't do the thing that Aiyuk does. Brian Thomas would be at the top of the list, but he's not going to be there at 31.
No,
he wouldn't be there at 21.
There's no way he's getting by Buffalo at 28. I mean, come on, Buffalo desperate for a receiver.
The Chiefs will jump ahead of you for him if he's
right.
Available.
Though I could see the Chiefs going Ladd McConkey. I think Ladd McConkey. Okay, so those are my two receivers.
I'll tell you another guy I like who's old. A few other guys I like who are older. I do like Ricky Pearsall because he's athletic. I do like Brent. I do like Brendan Rice. Yeah, I do like Brendan. There's so many productive guys in this draft at receiver.
I like Brandon Rice too. I think he plays the game with a lot of urgency. He plucks the ball with his hands. But to me, he's a little bit more like a possession guy in the NFL.
Totally. Yes.
He's but that's if you lost Juwan, then I'd be interested in Brandon Rice.
But you're going to lose Juwan probably if you keep Aiyuk.
But I mean, could you have two possession receivers there on your roster this year?
I think I got a physical receiver with a big catch radius. Who gets the ball on third down? Jennings.
Yeah.
I think a big receiver with a big catch radius is never, I don't know that you can have enough. The Niners that's exactly what they're a possession team, Larry. So
yeah.
That's
Keon Coleman, really.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Keon Coleman's got a huge catch radius. Okay, corner-wise, I think this is an awesome draft for corner. I mean, I've looked at 25 corners. There's all kinds of corners, guys late that are going to be really, really good. I'm a big fan of Willie Drew from Virginia State, but at 31, corner-wise, obviously the kid from Toledo's gone. There's no chance he's there. He's out. And he's terrific. So there's no way he's going to be there. As far as, other, corners that could be there, TJ Tampa from Iowa State, really good player, big corner, like him. He's very physical, and it would be a little bit of an overdraft, but I'm a big fan of Max Melton. And I'd probably be picking between those two guys. I like Max Melton. He runs in the 4.3s. His brother's in the NFL. He's a leader. He's unbelievably physical. So you're talking about a guy who runs in the 4.3s and will come up and hit you like a linebacker. That's a tough, to me, there's Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold. Wiggins is small. McKinstry, I think, is a little slow and coming off an injury, though I do like him. Rake of Straw, I really like. He's cocky. He's long, but he's also very, very, very thin and injury, high likelihood that he'll be hurt. Then you're looking at TJ Tampa, who's physical and hits and has good size. Max Melton, who's 5'11", 190, but he's just incredibly physical. There's Mikey Sainra still, who is, I think, maybe one of the best players in the draft as far as
you think he's a
I think
nickel?
he's a plug and play nickel, but he's also
And
5'10"
right,
and 185 pounds.
you have a pretty with him and Lenore. Your cornerback group gets pretty small.
He's pretty small, but he had the clinching interception, and he hasn't played corner for very long, but he's damn good. His ball skills are amazing, and he makes big plays. Mikey Sainra still. Andrew Phillips, the corner from Kentucky, is very athletic. Kyrie Jackson. What do you think of Kyrie from Oregon? Huge corner, like 6'4". You're not a fan.
I don't know, Larry. You know who I like, but he's much later is Shaw Smith-Wade.
Yes, I love him too. To me, he is a plug and play corner who's also small, but he's 5'10", 185. They're saying he's going to go pick 189. That's late. But I'm absolutely with you on Shaw Smith-Wade. What a player he is.
The thing about him and Kyrie Jackson, they both played on defenses that require you to tackle, like tough, physical, defensive head coaches. I would prefer him. Did you end up? You like Chigozie Anuzium?
Yes,
from Colorado State.
The former Cal Bear. I mean, he's a little bit of a project, but the tools are amazing. You're talking about 6'1", 200 pounds, really put together, and he ran 4.33 or something like that. He's a smart kid. He's got his degree. He transferred to Colorado State. He was very good for Colorado State. To me, he stood out at Niner local pro day as easily the best player on the field.
How old is Kyrie Jackson?
He's old. Yeah, he is pretty physically dominating with that size.
He's an adult.
But Shaw Smith-Wade is absolutely
Shaw.
steal. Shaw Smith-Wade. But there's other guys in this draft. Like there's a guy from Alabama State named Mikey Victor.
Kyrie Jackson's almost 25 for the record.
I know the guy I wanted to ask you about. What do you think of the Utah corner Miles Battle, who's 6'4"? Gigantic corner from Utah.
Yeah, I mean, he's like my third favorite Utah DB in this draft.
Okay.
Behind your guy Vaki and my guy Cole Bishop. But like I think I don't remember him being, I'd have to go back and look at his numbers, overly like productive. But to me, the Utah guys are very much like the old Seattle Seahawk prototypes. So I think Miles Battle's probably a good fit for the Niners. I think he's probably a really good fit actually for the Niners based on that, right? He's tall. We're not talking about a 5th round or 4th round corner here. We're not talking about a guy at 31. Let me pull up his.
So, I mean, that's basically where I'm at as far as 31. If it's an O lineman, give me Zach Frazier or Jackson Powers Johnson. Give me Michael Hall at defensive tackle, or maybe Ruka. At wide receiver, I'll take Xavier Legette or Brian Thomas. At corner, I would take TJ Tampa or Max Melton. And the last spot is linebacker. And to me, this is a really intriguing question, Guy, because where the Niners are going to be picking, they're going to have their pick of the best linebackers in the entire draft. And if you can find a Pro Bowl linebacker, isn't that a value? I know linebacker seems to be kind of a devalued position, but to me, Junior Colson and Jeremiah Trotter are the highest rated guys. But I like Cedric Gray from North Carolina a ton. And the A&M kid is, pretty damn good too.
Edgerrin Cooper.
I mean, there's also Peyton Wilson, who, won the Butkus, right, from NC State. And he's had some injury problems and there's some concerns there injury-wise. But, I mean, his workout numbers are amazing. I mean, to me, what are you looking to marry if you're a personnel guy? You're looking to marry awesome college production with off-the-charts physical capability. And then when you can marry those two traits throughout the draft, you've got a chance to really hit home runs. And Peyton Wilson is exactly that. He's one of the best athletes in this draft, testing-wise. Absolutely lit it up at the combine. And he won the Butkus Award. He was incredibly productive. But injuries are a big part of his narrative. So, but to me, the safest players in the draft are these linebackers, Cedric Gray and Edgerrin Cooper. These guys that just make tackle after tackle after tackle. Is that too high? Is 31 too high for a linebacker if you thought he was a Pro Bowler?
If you think he's a Pro Bowler, it's not. We're talking about a team who has one of the best linebacking combinations when healthy in the league. And one of them's a third rounder and one of them's a fifth rounder, right?
Right.
It doesn't feel like the reason you're saying it's a sweet spot is because there's not really an obvious first round linebacker in this draft. There's not a linebacker going 12 or something like that in this draft, right?
Right.
So it also makes me think that your second round pick would be a pretty valuable linebacker, or your third round pick would be a pretty valuable linebacker. So
yeah,
even though I
might
do
be able
think,
to get Cedric Gray in round 2.
Yeah, I do think they need a linebacker, but I probably would not use 31.
Yeah,
on a linebacker.
So there you have it. My sleeper linebacker, by the way, I love Kalen DeLoach, but Tyrese Knight from UTEP is amazing. Amazing player. He's just a little bit short, but he had the best 10-yard split of any linebacker. I think he had 145 tackles this year. Just an amazing player.
Did you end up liking Jamal Hill? Did you watch?
Oh,
Jamal
I do.
Hill?
Yes, I'm a big Jamal Hill fan. I that's one of my guys on day 3, 6 feet, 225. I did the research on him. I didn't realize he started as a corner. So, I mean, you're talking about a linebacker who probably is going to be an elite cover guy. And he hits. He's got long arms. He's rangy. Yeah, I mean, Jamal Hill on day 3 is absolutely on my very, very short list of guys I got to have.
Easton Gibbs was a productive player at Wyoming.
That's another underrated program. Really underrated program. Okay, last one. And we've gone a long time today, actually. What are we? We're an hour and 37 in.
Yeah, marathon.
Last one. At noon today, so in an hour and 15 minutes from now, Sione Vaki's coming on the show. So give me some Sione Vaki breakdown. You're Mr. Pac-12. Oh, Kev's calling.
Sorry, Kev's calling saying, end the stream.
End this stream, Krug. That's what he's about to say. But Sione Vaki, give me your Sione Vaki breakdown, because the Niners, his agent is a guy who a buddy of mine knew. I contacted the agent. He's a local guy, and of course, Vaki's from Antioch. He was a running back. He was a return guy, but now he's a safety, and supposedly the Niners are showing a lot of interest. Brought him in for a workout. What do you think? Would he be a good 49er? Is there a comp in the NFL to Vaki? Is he better? Is he better or worse than Hufanga in your mind?
Well, he's got to be a little less developed than I think Hufanga was. I'm not looking at Vaki's numbers in front of me, but Hufanga was probably a more productive player in college, a much more productive player in college. But what I love about Vaki is, I saw somebody just said on the chat, he's a gold helmet. That would not surprise me if he's one of their gold helmets.
Really? Why? Why is that?
Because, this is a guy who in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State played out of position. Like, they need him to play running back last year. He goes and plays running back and has a 100-yard game. I mean, let's go look at his I wasn't prepared to talk to you about Sione Vaki this year. He had a game like they had a bunch of running backs hurt last year. So they have him play running back, and he has a 100-yard game out of nowhere. So I bet they love that he is just a like whatever I got to do for the team, I'm going to do for the team type guy.
What round do you think? If you had to attach a round to him, what round do you think you think he'll be?
Feels like a fifth rounder to me.
Hmm.
What do you think?
Invader 49er said fifth.
Oh, well, is he on the show today?
Invader 49er or Vaki?
Vaki is.
Yeah, Vaki.
Yeah, I mean, I just think he has this like whatever you need me to do thing to him. And a guy that can just suddenly go play running back and be good at it, like explosive. And they threw him the football too. I wonder if he can return. Is a smart guy. You know, like I think he probably I bet if you had Kyle Whittingham here, he'd be like just ultimate teammate.
Three-way player, maybe? Offense, defense, and special teams?
I wonder.
Well, I'm interested to talk to him and talk a little bit about what his pre-draft's been like and what teams are saying to him and what kind of feedback he's getting, because I watched his running back film. He looks very instinctive. And I watched his safety film and I thought, man, this guy's flowing in the right direction. I don't see too many examples of him not flowing in the right direction. So it's probably a pretty heady player who watches a ton of film.
Yep.
And, you know, maybe with the new return rules, they see value there as well. So, yeah, I'm eager to see. You know, I've heard people. I was talking to Lombardi, the great Dave Lombardi, and he said of all the players in the draft, he thinks Vaki's the guy that if he was wagering, he would wager that he would be a Niner.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, I think from just a person standpoint, I could see. I think they would like a lot of. Utah guys are,
it's a great program.
Yeah,
great program.
Kyle Whittingham does an awesome job. His son is on Andy Reid's coaching staff. They're just high level guys. They have a lot of high level guys, smart guys. You have to be tough. Kyle Whittingham's thing is, you become us, we don't become you. In other words, there's no place for individuals here.
Well, and also you're going to have to beat them on a Saturday. They don't beat themselves. They don't beat themselves. I'm a big Cam Rising fan, but then he went down and they kind of ran out of quarterbacks this year. Yeah. But what a program.
I gave you some bad intel. Mekhi Bernard was the guy that played out of position 2 years ago in the Rose Bowl, not Sione Vaki. So don't.
Gotcha.
But Sione played out of position this year. So I got my Utah guys that they move guys. They've moved multiple quarterbacks to safety in their history. So yeah, Sione Vaki.
Kev says, wrap up the stream. It's gone on too long. All right, there you go.
What is Kev doing? He's busy. Go do something else. Leave us alone.
Justin, he says, Larry, how would you feel about Rakestraw Jr. at 31? I like him as far as he's got major swag. That guy's got confidence. And to me, confidence is the number one trait of a corner. If you ever see a corner and he's like, I don't know, maybe I might be able to do it, don't draft him. They got to be like, I'm the man in this beast. And Rakestraw wears number one. He's an incredible athlete. He's just a little thin. He's a little on the thin side.
I would just ask, I'd be curious Vaki's take on Jonah Ellis and Cole Bishop. Those two guys I'd be interested in.
I'm writing that down.
Jonah Ellis, I like. Jonah Ellis, by the way, a Bloodlines guy. Not a Niners Bloodlines guy, but a
Luther.
Bloodlines guy.
His dad, Luther, is coaching. He's not coaching, I believe, at Utah.
Yeah.
I got to ask him also about Miles Battle because that's a 6'4" corner that he played with. And I also got to ask him about that run. They got an offensive lineman. Is it Simu Lato or something like that? Who's the Utah offensive lineman who's just a dominating run blocker? I got him here on my list. This guy's amazing run blocker. I was watching the film. I'm like, my God, this guy's amazing. Yeah, his name is Satoa Lemua. Dominant run blocker, not a great pass protector, short arms, but I mean, he's the Utah guard. Ridiculous. Matt says, why is Guy doing a Trent Baalke impression?
I've decided to change everything. And you do a Baalke impression, actually. That's good.
You know, it's funny that you say that because, you know, I was talking to Coach and he's a football guy, you know, and I'm a football guy.
Yeah,
and there's no reason in the world I ought to trade Lowry, that 49ers, the 17th pick in the draft, for Brandon Aiyuk. But my reality out here in Jacksonville, Lowry, is that if we don't win, my ass is gone. So there's a very good chance I'm going to offer John Lynch 17 overall for Brandon Aiyuk. I don't know if he'll take it, but I got to offer it. Otherwise, I could be out of a gig. You know what I'm saying?
You know, I'll last thing I'll say, and then Kev can, you know, be released from his prison. I do think it's such an important year for Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. Last year, going into last year, they thought like, all right, he's about to become a $50 million a year quarterback. And then he didn't.
Right.
And I thought that Doug Peterson said something really interesting at the league meetings. He said, you know, the one thing with Trevor in the big moments, I'm paraphrasing, was like, he still needs to like make plays in those moments.
Yeah.
And I think it's not only about Baalke's job security, it's the same thing the Niners are doing. Like, let's get as much around our quarterback as we can. I think they've invested so much in Trevor Lawrence, and they might be about to invest even more in Trevor Lawrence. Probably are, right? They're just probably going to, like the Dolphins, just going to have to pay him, whether he's great this year or not. That it does make sense from their standpoint to just, let's get him. We're not going to make him teach some receiver how to play. We'll go get him a guy that makes him better. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, their best receiver is Evan Ingram right now, and he's good, but he's a tight end. And last supremacist says, or lost supremacist, says point, Jarius Jones would be a perfect slot for us. Don't even know him. I'll have to look him up, but appreciate that.
I also don't know him.
What do you got cooking the rest of the day?
Haircut.
Nice.
Went up at 2:00.
Look at that.
And I got a bunch. Yep. Some draft and draft prep. And I just got my embargoed Colorado depth charts for the spring game. So,
I mean, that is
just for my eyes only.
That's just a fabulous head of hair right there. I mean, it's just, is it true, the rumor that's out there, that the reason that Haberman and Middlecoff split up was because of John's jealousy over your hair? Did you guys fight behind the scenes about John not having hair and you
John once upon a time
had
a great head of hair. He had a great head of hair. And you know, I don't know. It turns out he's a good looking bald guy. I don't know if I'd look bald. I'd probably go PRP treatments first if it came to that. But
good to see you, man. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. And thanks to Marin Auto Glass. For Guy Haberman, I'm Larry Krueger. Tune in at noon. Sione Vaki in the house. Until then, peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of.